I've seen MDF kits around the hobby for many years, and I've never thought they looked, good. But there are some situations where I feel that an MDF kit can end up looking quite good, particularly when the surface can be dry brushed for either concrete or for wood. And so when I was at the UK Games Expo recently, I picked up this wooden structure, a stable by Warcradle Scenics, to go with my cowboy models for Dead Man's Hand. I gave it a try to see if it could change my mind about MDF kits. And immediately upon opening the packet, I was presented with a horrendous stench of burned chemicals. My only guess is that it will be the glue from the MDF when it was cut. I've seen other MDF kits and they always have this kind of faint but somewhat pleasant smell of burned wood, but this was noxious and pervasive, and after just about half an hour of poking out the parts, I had to stop because I was getting a headache, and that headache didn't clear for more than 12 hours. Well, after wrapping up the parts in a plastic bag to contain the smell for a couple of days, I set about coating every single piece in PVA glue for the purpose of containing that smell. Once I had finished the obligatory 2-thin coats, the smell was reduced enough that I could work with the pieces, although it still wasn't pleasant. I realised during this time that 2/3 of the pieces of this kit are the fence, a wattle fence that looks kind of almost nothing like a wattle fence actually looks like in real life, even from the usual kind of 1 meter arm's length gaming distance. Now it might be possible to fill this fence with some mud texture to make it more of a wattle and daubs type of fence, but for now I've dumped them in a bag and I hope to forget that they even exist. The other accessories are these little crates and water troughs, which look okay, and they did take a lot less time to assemble than the fence. And the less said about the plough, the better. Really, the only part that I have anything nice to say about is the stable itself, and given that that is the main part of this kit, that's probably for the best. The roof panels slot nicely together into the supports in a way that covers up most of the joins, and one of the ends even has a kind of plank piece to cover up their unsightly peg holes. The other end, unfortunately, doesn't, which is a shame, but only a minor one. One oddity I had to deal with was that the peg holes on one of the wall pieces wouldn't pop out, and I just quickly drilled those out. It wasn't a really big deal, and this is the kind of end piece that I use that covering panel for. The back and sidewall panels had no locating pegs, so I had to kind of hold them in place to ensure they glued straight, but the back panel did have some extra beams, so there's loads of surface area for it to glue onto. Overall, there is just a tiny bit of flex in this structure, but it's mainly because it's made of such thin beams. I'm sure on a different build, like a barn or a proper house, it would be plenty strong. And it does look good overall. All of these flat surfaces for the MDF kit do lend themselves well to the flat slats and wooden planking of this type of building. But how should we go about painting it? It might look good with just some dark brown wash or a real wood stain over it, but to aid in covering up that slight lingering smell that I can still detect, I'll put a little more paint on it. A grey prime and then a base coat of a dark brown craft paint through my airbrush. I wanted to test this craft paint through the airbrush for a while, as it would be very helpful for terrain, but I very rarely make terrain, so this is the first chance that I've actually had to use it. And it did work plenty fine enough for use, and so that is going to be used in the future. After that, I went at it with some dry brushing, not that I'm any good at dry brushing, that is. I did a generous light brown over most of the piece, and then some targeted dry brushing for some interest in the model. Some black around the lowest points for mould, and green around kind of the broken slats for moss kind of effect, and white over a lot of it, just for no better reason than I really like dry brushing white over wooden model pieces. As a final touch, instead of brushing on an ink wash, which is how I might usually do wood, I airbrushed an ink on directly, but very subtly, over most of the piece to bring down a lot of the harshness of my terrible dry brushing. And so that is the Warcradle Scenics Stable complete. As far as I'm going to take it for the video at least. I might add some extra fun bits later. And overall, it's not too bad. The detail on the outside is acceptable and the visible joining pieces are at a minimum. So long as you don't look on the inside where it doesn't necessarily look as good, you probably won't notice that. And the way that you're going to be looking at this building when gaming, you're going to kind of have that isometric top-down kind of view. You're not going to see any of it, so it's not a big issue. And it does look great next to my Desperados, which is what I wanted to use it for, and so that's great. But the same can't be said for the accessories, which make up a full half of this kit. The fence and the plough look pretty poor, to be honest, and the boxes and troughs, while they are fine, they're such simple shapes, they'd be trivial to make in any of a dozen other methods. I would much rather this kit had replaced that half with all the accessories with a second building, or even just kind of have the one sheet to reduce the price. That would also be a good option. I really believe the accessories are a detriment for me in this kit, given how they look compared to how I usually make the models. But the stable is the main focus of the kit, and that bit does look good, which is appropriate, and will certainly be used alongside my cowfolk. I went into this project thinking that MDF kits are a lesser, limited option, which sometimes can be squeezed into looking good, but I think I have only slightly changed my mind here overall, and I know a little bit more about the strengths of MDF kits, especially with wooden buildings. So let me know in the comments if I'm too harsh on this kit that gave me a 12-hour headache, or on just MDF kits in general. How can I improve the look of this kit rather than just kind of my quick dry brushing? And certainly if you're poking around Warcradle Scenics website, you can see that there's a lot of options for kind of these wooden buildings that would look very good in MDF kits, and they are certainly not an unreasonable price. But for now, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.